Long before the flood, long before the first shovel of earth ever cut into the holy ground of Eden, an ancient text whispered a strange and unsettling idea. It said that human beings, as we know them now, are not the original design, that somewhere inside us, or perhaps somewhere on this same planet, lies a vessel we never finished wearing, a second body, an earlier one, a form of flesh that did not age, did not decay, and did not need the food of this broken world to survive. And the text that records this strange claim is not the book of a modern mystic or a fantasy novelist. It is one of the oldest religious documents in existence. It is the Book of Enoch. What you are about to hear is not just a retelling of a strange myth. It is the story of a manuscript that survived the destruction of ancient libraries, hid for centuries inside desert caves, and resurfaced to ignite one of the most provocative debates in the modern world of biblical scholarship. It raises a question that sounds almost science fictional and has been asked by rabbis, by Ethiopian priests, by Dead Sea Scroll scholars, and by curious viewers across the world. If the Book of Enoch is right, what happened to the body we were supposed to have? To understand why people are returning to this question now, we have to go back to the very beginning of the document itself. The Book of Enoch is not a single book, and that is one of the first things modern readers get wrong. It is a collection, commonly called 1 Enoch, to distinguish it from two later works known as 2 Enoch and 3 Enoch. For an Enoch is itself composed of 5 distinct sections, written across many decades, and stitched together by later editors, under the name of the mysterious patriarch, who, in the book of Genesis, walked with God and then vanished. The first of these sections, called the Book of the Watchers, is the one most relevant to our question. It was likely composed sometime between the 4th and 3rd centuries before the Common Era, during the turbulent era when Hellenistic culture was colliding with ancient Jewish tradition. Scribes in Aramaic, the everyday language of Judea at the time, began writing visions, dreams, and explanations of the world's hidden order. Later chapters were added up until around the turn of the era, and the entire thing was preserved in Ethiopic, namely the language of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, where it still sits in the biblical canon to this day. Fragments of the oldest Aramaic version were recovered in 1948, the same year as the Dead Sea Scrolls in Qumran Cave 4, by archaeologists studying the brittle brown remains of a community that had been waiting in the desert for almost 2,000 years. 11 distinct Aramaic manuscripts of Moiri Darn Enoch, and 9 more from a related text called the Book of Giants were found, all of them placing the Watchers' narrative squarely in the world of the Second Temple period. This is not fringe material. When George Nicholsburg of the University of Iowa cataloged these fragments, he was able to confirm that the Watcher's story was already authoritative at Qumran, and that the text influenced early Christian writers far more than most believers realize. The Epistle of Jude in the New Testament directly quotes 1 Enoch. The Book of Revelation reflects its imagery. Even early Babylonian-era communities may have known versions of the same traditions about fallen watchers and forbidden knowledge. So who are the Watchers? The Book of the Watchers identifies them as 200 angels sent to observe the human world, who abandoned their post and descended onto the summit of Mount Hermon in the days of Jared, the great-grandfather of Noah. Their leader, named Semjaza, addressed his fellow Watchers and convinced them to bind one another with an oath, agreeing to take human wives. The location they chose for this oath, Hermon, is significant. Hermon sits at the northern edge of ancient Israel, a snowy peak that towered over the trade routes connecting Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. The writer wanted the descent of the angels to feel like a real historical event, anchored not in a vague mythical past, but in a real geographical place. From that oath, everything else begins to unravel. The unions between the Watchers and human women produced beings the text calls Nephilim, or giants. They were enormous, violent, and rapacious. According to the 7th chapter of Enoch, they consumed everything humanity produced, then turned on people themselves. They began to sin against birds and beasts and reptiles and fish, and to devour one another's flesh and drink the blood. The writer does not allow any sentimental reading. The giants consumed each other. The earth became a stage of cannibalism and gore, and the cries of the slaughtered rose up to the heavens. That, the writer is saying, is the world that preceded the flood. But the Watchers did not only father monsters, they also handed down knowledge, and it was the knowledge that mattered most of all. Each Watcher had his specialty. Azazel, who would later be remembered in the Hebrew Bible as the figure bound in the wilderness on Yom Kippur, taught humanity how to forge swords and knives and shields and breastplates. He revealed the secrets of metals, the art of working them, and from this came ornaments, bracelets, and even the use of antimony to beautify the eyelids. The invention of cosmetics, of warfare, of metallurgy, of mining for precious stones, all of it is described in Enoch as a single, devastating transmission from a fallen angel. Semjaza, the leader, taught enchantments and root cutting, an early form of herbal sorcery. Armoros taught men how to resolve enchantments. Barakajal taught astrology, Kokabel taught the constellations, Ezekiel taught the knowledge of the clouds, Arakiel taught the signs of the earth, Shamsiel taught the signs of the sun, and Sariel taught the course of the moon. For the ancient writer for Enoch, all of this was forbidden because it broke the boundary that was supposed to separate heaven and earth. The watchers were not meant to teach, they were meant to watch. Their punishment, when the archangels, Michael, Uriel, Raphael, and Gabriel, were sent to bind them, was imprisonment in chains of darkness until the final judgment. Now we can begin to unpack the strange phrase that animates the modern question. Some readers, going back to the earliest traditions, have argued that Forrest Enoch is presenting something far more mysterious than a story about metallurgy. They suggest that the forbidden knowledge of the Watchers was not really about swords. It was not really about eyeliner. It was about the true nature of what was supposed to live inside the human form. And this is where the story of the second body begins. To get there, we have to go back even further than Warren Enoch, back to the second chapter of Genesis, where Adam and Eve are described eating from the tree. When the pair realized they were naked, the text says, God made garments of skin for them. Most English readers assume this means animal hide. Rabbinic tradition, however, preserved a very different reading. According to a long line of interpretation found in the Midrash, the Babylonian Talmud, and later mystical texts, Adam was originally clothed in a garment of light, a luminous body that radiated the glory of heaven. When Adam fell, that garment was stripped away. The skin garments of Genesis 3:21 replaced it. The 2nd century Christian teacher Irenaeus, writing in his treatise against heresies, used the phrase garments of skin in exactly the symbolic sense as the fleshly body humanity was forced to put on after losing its original clothing. The Jewish mystical tradition went further. According to the Kabbalistic writings collected in the Zohar, Adam lost his original body of light because of the fall, and the skin garments were a kind of burial shroud. Some medieval Christian writers, including Andreas Osiander and others in the Reformation era mystical tradition, suggested the same. The gloss surrounding Genesis 3:21 in the Douay Rheims Bible literally parenthetically translates garments of skin as in figure of the mortality which was to come upon them. Death itself became the new clothing. If you accept this reading, then the question of the second body begins to feel less like a YouTube mystery and more like an old theological argument that never got a proper answer. The original Adam, in this telling, was not supposed to have a heart that could fail, lungs that could collapse, a brain that could wither. He was supposed to wear something different, a luminous form, a body of light, an inner vessel that some traditions refer to as the original man, the heavenly Adam, or, in Kabbalistic language, the first image. When Adam fell, according to First Enoch's worldview, the Watcher's transmission of forbidden knowledge corrupted what was left of that design. Swords, jewelry, dyes, sorcery. Each one pulled the human race further away from the body of light, and further into the skin garment, the mortal body, the one we are trapped inside now. This is the popular claim circulating today. Some readers of Warren Enoch have suggested that the second body has not actually been lost. It has been hidden. And the question of where it was hidden is exactly where things get contested. There is no single ancient tradition here. There is a constellation of traditions, and they disagree. The first and most ancient location proposed is the Garden of Eden itself. According to the Book of the Secrets of Enoch, also known as 2 Enoch or the Slavonic Enoch, a text that survives only in Old Church Slavonic and is generally dated to the first centuries of the Common Era, Adam was given life on earth so that he could keep the commandments in a garden in the east. Some readers of 2 Enoch, chapters 30 and 31, argue that the luminous form Adam was supposed to wear was deposited in Eden as a kind of cosmic deposit. It has been waiting there, hidden behind a veil we cannot easily cross, ever since the gates were sealed by the cherub and the flaming sword. Adherents of this theory point to the fact that Eden, in the book of Genesis, is described as a place where humanity was supposed to live forever. If that is true, the argument goes, then Eden must also be where the body that could live in it was kept. Critics counter that the Slavonic Enoch was composed many centuries after Warren Enoch, that its theology was heavily influenced by Christian baptismal tradition, and that it may not have preserved anything from a real primordial memory. The second location is the interior of the earth. Some traditions, drawing on the Syriac Cave of Treasures and on certain Merkavah mystical writings, suggested that the original body of light was buried beneath the holy mountain where the first humans were formed. In the Book of Jubilees, a Hebrew text closely related to First Sons Enoch and preserved in Ethiopic, the garden is described with peculiar precision. The text says the Garden of Eden was situated on the third day of creation, far above the surface of the world, with rivers flowing down to water the inhabited lands below. This vertical cosmology is exactly what some interpreters think Warren Enoch is hinting at when it talks about chambers and storehouses. The Book of the Luminaries, The third section of Word Enoch cataloged the positions of the sun, the moon, and the stars using a 364-day solar calendar that did not match the lunar calendar of the Jerusalem temple. In one interpretation, that calendar is not just astronomy, it is a map of where the keepers of the world's hidden chambers stored what came before the fall. This is speculative, but the internal logic is real. Or Enoch is obsessed with hidden places. The angels describe the winds, the mountains of metal, the pillars of heaven, the abyss, the rivers of fire. Whatever was hidden, the writer believed, was hidden well. The third location is inside us. This is the claim that has spread the most widely in the modern world and that inspired your search for this video. The argument goes like this. If Adam lost the body of light, but God said humanity would continue to live on the earth, then the body of light could not have been destroyed. It must have been compressed or folded inward, lodged somewhere within the skin garment so that the new human could keep walking, breathing, working, and reproducing. Some modern popularizers have pointed to a passage in the Book of the Watchers that describes the spirits which have gone forth from the body of their flesh. According to that line, the body holds something capable of generating spirit, and that something must logically have an architecture designed for it. Others have linked it to New Testament language about the inner man in 2 Corinthians 4:16, where Paul writes that though our outward man perishes, the inward man is renewed day by day. Some Kabbalistic sources describe the soul's garment as having a celestial template. According to those sources, when the soul descends into the mortal body, it still carries a faint imprint of the luminescence it was made from. Some mystical authors even call this the neshama, the highest part of the soul. From this reading, the hidden body is not a location somewhere in the world. It is a deeper you. This is also where modern scholarship is most cautious. There is no continuous ancient tradition that explicitly reads, for Enoch as a doctrine of an inner luminous body that was preserved intact after the fall. The texts we have speak in fragments. Rabbinic writers refer to garments of light. Slavonic Enoch describes a luminous Adam before sin. New Testament authors use the phrase, the inward man. None of these traditions say exactly the same thing. They overlap, but they do not match. Most secular scholars treat the idea of a hidden second body as a kind of aggregate theology, a patchwork stitched together from later sources, projected backward onto Word Enoch. There is no unambiguous sentence in Word Enoch that says, the second body of humanity was hidden at such and such location. That is important. It does not, however, mean the question is empty. The clues are too many. The literary patterns are too persistent. What we can confidently say is this. Word Enoch is one of the oldest surviving documents on Earth that tried to explain why pre-flood humanity was different. It placed that difference at the door of the Watchers. The Watchers' forbidden knowledge was not simply about technology, it was about the breakdown of boundaries. They treated the inner life as raw material for experimentation. They stripped humanity of something it was not supposed to lose. The Slavonic Enoch, the Book of Jubilees, the Rabbinic Midrashim, the New Testament epistles, and the Kabbalistic traditions all preserve traces of the same memory. Something was lost at the moment of the fall. Something was hidden at the moment of the flood. And what was hidden by the silence of the texts themselves was something human beings were not yet ready to receive. This is also why the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church has kept Word Enoch in its canon to this day. The Ethiopic Christian community received the text directly from ancient Jewish communities living in the Horn of Africa, and it has treated it as authoritative scripture for at least 1,500 years. Western Christianity, by contrast, gradually removed it from its canon after the Council of Laodicea in the 4th century, and most Protestant traditions follow that decision. The Ethiopian Church has never budged. This is why the full Ethiopic version of Word Enoch survived when the Greek version was mostly lost. The Byzantines copied only the small sections that George Synkellis quoted in the 8th century. What it does say, over and over, is that the Watchers distorted something. They touched the boundary. They stripped something off the human form. They replaced it with something that decays. The traditions clustered around one Enoch, then try to name what was stripped and where it was kept. Some traditions say the answer is Eden. Some say it is buried. Some say it is inside us. None of them is unanimous. All of them, however, are sounding the same note. Something was lost or hidden. Something waits to be found. One of the most provocative details comes from a slightly different angle. The Book of Giants recovered at Qumran. The giants, according to that text, are troubled by dreams. They send a messenger up to heaven to ask what the dreams mean. That messenger passes the question to Enoch, who is the only figure alive who can stand in both worlds. Enoch writes the dream on twin tablets, and those tablets are sent down as a kind of verdict. The giants are given one last chance to repent, and they refuse. The text then describes the flood. What is important here is not the giants' rebellion. It is the tablets. Twin tablets, twin deposits, hidden, sealed, written. The Book of Giants treats the hidden, sealed message as the most sacred object in the cosmos, the one thing that links the world above to the world below. Whether that detail is a metaphor or a memory, it has the same shape as the second body tradition. Something waits to be revealed, something waits to be opened. There's also a curious detail about Mount Hermon itself. The oath of the Watchers was sworn on Hermon, which is why the Book of the Watchers calls the place by the unusual phrase Wormel or Armon. Some readers look at Hermon and see the place where the hidden body was concealed. They point to the fact that Hermon was regarded as sacred long before the rise of Israel, that it had Canaanite sanctuaries, and that the Catholic monastic tradition later placed the transfiguration of Jesus on a mountain identified with Hermon. The theological stacking, from Canaanite high place to transfiguration site, has been read as a long memory that the mountain holds something. Once again, this is speculation. It is not consensus scholarship. But it is precisely the kind of detail that the Book of Enoch invites readers to take seriously. And this brings us to the heart of the question. The flood came, according to Word Enoch, because the Watchers corrupted every line drawn through nature. Swords, dyes, sorcery, metals, all forbidden because the Watchers were not supposed to teach. And then the flood wiped the slate clean. Noah, who the text describes as a new kind of patriarch, walked into the ark with a renewed creation in his keeping. The covenant God made with Noah in Genesis 9 did not restore the body of light. It gave humanity a different inheritance, a new skin, a new covenant, a new world. The luminous garment was, in this theological ark, set aside until a later age. Return with me for a moment back to the Dead Sea caves. Archaeologists wrapped 11 Aramaic manuscripts of Warren Enoch into storage boxes and brought them to study tables in places like the Huntington Library and the Israel Antiquities Authority. They dusted off broken columns of text, and they were able to confirm that the words describing the descent of the Watchers, the oath on Hermon, the birth of the giants, the transmission of forbidden knowledge, and the prayers of Enoch were already in place long before the rise of Christianity. The Book of the Parables, the part of 1 Enoch that mentions the Son of Man and the Messianic Judge, was almost certainly the latest section, and it is also the section missing from Qumran. Everything else was already ancient by the time Jesus was born. These are not late myths. They are foundational. They influence the New Testament. They influence the rabbis. They influence theology to this day. So where does this leave us? The honest answer is that 1 Enoch itself does not declare in plain language that a second body was hidden inside humanity, nor does it specify a precise geographical repository. The popular claims that circulate online are pulling from a much larger constellation of tradition: Slavonic Enoch, Rabbinic Midrash, the Book of Jubilees, mystical Kabbalistic texts, even the New Testament's language about the inward man. When these traditions are merged, the picture emerges of a luminous original body that was either concealed in Eden, deposited under the world, or folded inward at the moment of the fall. The reason this claim feels compelling is that 4 Enoch's core message is consistent. The Watchers corrupted the boundary. Something was stripped. Something waits. The hard historical evidence backs the corruption, the stripping, the waiting. The exact location of the hidden second body, however, is tradition, speaking through the text, not the text itself. The deepest insight here is not about some hidden vault in some unnamed mountain. It is about the fact that ancient writers believed a different kind of human was supposed to walk the earth. The early writers of 1 Enoch saw our current state as a diminished state. They saw technology, warfare, ornament, and occult practice as the visible evidence of what had been lost. They saw the flood as a violent renewal rather than a gentle return. And they saw Enoch, the man who walked with God and was taken as the only human being who crossed the boundary without dying. Enoch was, for these writers, the still living proof that the hidden body still exists somewhere. Whatever it is, wherever it is, it has not yet been lost entirely. If it had been, the line of Enoch would have been broken and the bridge between heaven and earth would have closed. That is the haunting mystery at the heart of this entire tradition. The flood did not end the story. The flood ended one chapter of the story. Something was preserved, hidden, sealed, waiting. The Book of Enoch invites every generation to ask the question: if our current body is the skin garment, then what was the luminous one before it? And if it was hidden, where is it? The honest answer is that we may have always been carrying it, and that we may have only just begun to remember. If this exploration of the Book of Enoch opened your eyes to the world of apocryphal scripture and the deep traditions that flow around it, do not stop here. There is more waiting for you. Subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you never miss a single investigation. Like this video if you want more content that picks up where mainstream searches leave off, and leave a comment below telling me what you think the second body really was. Was it the Garden of Eden, the inner depths of the earth, or something sealed inside every human being since the moment of the fall? Share this video with someone who still believes that everything important is in the Bible they were handed. They deserve to know about the scrolls that were left out. The mystery is not over. It has only just begun.